Cool. Well, let's dive in. So we'll be in section 7 of your Ignite manuals, or Spark manuals. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah.
Awesome. We're going to be covering, and this is really just a follow-up to our last conversation, and it's going to add a lot of context around how do we really master the opportunity of this market, right? Number one, we understand that listings is where the money's at, right? Really making sure that your business is focused on listings and making that the core of your business, but also understanding that there are a lot of buyers in the market right now. And how do we give them an amazing experience, but also how do we find them and use those as more fuel for our business? Now, with this session, again, we're going to, as we always do, recover what successful agents do at a high level. And they focus on 2 pillars in their business. They focus on growing their business and running their business. And it's not a secret on what it takes to be successful in real estate. The blueprint is already there. People have already paved the path. And so these are the simple action steps when done consistently bear fruit that you want in your business. And again, just as we mentioned, there's an important part of balance between these 2 dynamics, making sure that you're investing time into growing your business, but also not neglecting running the business, right? So that your clients have an amazing quality experience, and you're not sacrificing the quality because you're just consistently trying to put more leads in the funnel. But at the same time, you do need to make sure that you're not only trying to run a business and not focusing on the important items of lead gen that bring new business into your funnel. Because when you do that, you obviously have very inconsistent business, right? And so it's important to focus on both. And so we always recapture that. And the goal of Ignite is really to model what successful agents do. Get right into practicing the core items or the lead measures that are going to lead to the results that we want 90 days from now. And so these are them. So the skill that we're going to focus on today is lead generating for buyers. So what does that look like? How do we do it at a high level and really just have a consistent flow of business coming in the door? And so the different points we're going to cover throughout this next hour to 75 minutes is finding the buyers, cultivating buyer leads, qualifying buyer leads, and then signing the buyer agreement. Okay, so those 4 points. So first, let's look at some statistics. Caitlin and Lexi, I'm going to have you guys break a few of these down for us. Caitlin, would you read the first? Actually, just read all 4 of the statistics that are on there.
89% of buyers purchased their homes through a real estate agent. 41% of buyers found their agent through a referral from friends or family. 75% of buyers interviewed only one real estate agent during their home search. And 51% of buyers visited an open house as a way to search for homes.
Awesome. Thank you. So taking these statistics into consideration, what do you guys think? Where do you think is a good place to start looking for buyers? Your SOI, right? Should be priority number 1. And a few sessions ago, we talked all about lead gen, and we got hyper-focused on SOI work. Why is it so valuable to really focus on your SOI, especially early on in your career?
I think when you have those relationships, it's more likely that they're going to continue to come back or at least refer you out. I feel like there's a more personal relationship there too. right off the bat. I don't know.
Yeah. So people do business with people that they like and trust. And you have, there's a few things. Number one, it's far more cost efficient to lead gen within your SOI. And not only on that, but you also get a higher ROI on the back end with referrals, right? Referrals are a big way of being able to generate new business. And so your SOI is an amazing way to be able to tap into referrals instantly, whether you've done business with them or not, because they already trust you. Whereas, let's say a lead that you find through Facebook, they're probably not going to right off the bat give you a referral. They're going to go through the process themselves with you, and then 3 months down the road or 4 months down the road, after they've had an amazing experience, that's when you could shop for some referrals, right? But with your SOI, it's if they have somebody that's looking to buy, sell, or invest, they've heard that information, they're far more likely to pass that on to you immediately through lead generating with your SOI. And so that's a big, big focal point. Where else? Where else would be a good place to look for buyers? Or some good lead gen opportunities or activities that we could do? Open house. Be a great one. Who's usually walking through open houses? Buyers, right? You can even find people who are selling. They're buyers, but they also haven't found an agent to sell their home before they buy, right? So you can kind of get a double play there. And so really, open houses are an amazing place to be able to network and build relationships with people who are looking to buy. So that's an awesome one. Let's take one more.
You can do open houses for someone else's list.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So for those who are on Zoom, Lexi just asked if you can do open houses for other people's listings, which obviously is a great way to be able to start, especially for agents who are super busy. It's nice for them to be able to hold an open house and pass that on to new agents who would like the opportunity to be able to get that experience. Great way to start. What is something new? I wouldn't say new, but it's something that people have focused a lot of time and energy on since COVID hit. How have they been doing meetings? Zoom, right? It's blown up. And so you'll find that an interesting new opportunity is to really just hold powerful virtual classes for new buyers. People who may not, who are first-time buyers. You can hold a first-time buyer Zoom course or virtual class. But you can also do a series where it's, investors. I've done one, I did 3 of them last year that translated in 6 of my transactions came from those virtual investors classes that I had put on. And so you can create a lot of opportunity through holding virtual first-time homebuyer classes or other classes that would be valuable for people and being aware of what's happening in the real estate market. You showing yourself as an expert in the real estate market. And then, of course, and if you guys, you should be on page 3 of the guide. So that's where there's some space to be able to write in these opportunities. And it's really focused on getting clear about what are the different ways I'm going to implement. You don't have to do everything, right? There's a ton of opportunities in the Ignite manual where it shows all the different ways that you can market and prospect for new business. There's a lot. And so what you want to do is really get focused on, hey, here's the 3 to 5 things I'm going to do for the next 6 months. And I'm going to do them consistently, religiously, and really focus my time and energy into these specific marketing, prospecting avenues, right? And so get clear about those and what those are going to look like, but make sure that your SOI is priority number one, right? And so utilize command, get your SOI in there, and then do not forget to follow up. The biggest thing, that's where most agents drop the ball, is they forget to follow up. You can use command to really automate a lot of that process, right? What were some of the items that we talked about last week when we went through command? What tools are built into command to help us with that process?
Like the drip tools, and it's something that's automated, so it's taking care of it for you, and it will prompt you when you need to take an action.
Absolutely. So utilizing smart plans that are automatically get a trigger for those important events, right? When we talked about the home anniversary and birthdays, and being able to send out monthly neighborhood nurtures, all of these different tools help you stay on top of your 36 touches that you need throughout a year. Again, if you try to do those manually, you're going to drop the ball, or you just can't get to enough people for it to make sense. There's no scalability if you're going to do it all on your own. So leveraging command, leveraging the tools that we have, and using those smart campaigns really help you to be able to stay top of mind with your SOI and be able to deliver an exceptional experience to a lot of people. And then again, going back to this screen, is just don't forget that this is our number one job as real estate agents, is we're in the lead gen business. And that should be priority number one, always on our calendar. So let's talk a little bit deeper about this. And this is really going into a little bit more in depth on how can we really nurture our connections, our contacts. How do we really make sure that they have an amazing experience to where they become raving fans? They want to share this with family members and friends because the process was just flawless, right? And with that, using command is really where the lead gen model shines for KW. It's making sure that there's a process and system in place so that when somebody's in your funnel, you now already have the plan of how they're going to be, how you're going to interact with them over the next 3, 6, 12 months and coming years. And so that's part of what we're going to break down today is like, well, what tools can we use in command, going a little bit deeper than we have in the past on cultivating buyers' leads. And that's really about focusing on placing them into an interactive touch program. And part of that is housed within your database, within command, and within the platform that we have access to. So for those who missed it, we talked a little bit. Let me pull up command, get logged in so we can show these resources that can be utilized at a high level. So let's go ahead and break down a few of these drip campaigns that we can utilize. Okay, so when we're in command, we can navigate to the Smart Plan library. Have you guys both logged in to play with this since last week? Okay, you're getting close.
My license got approved. I called them yesterday. Got approved on the 8th.
Oh, well, good
No,
news.
I'm ready to go though.
Awesome. That's great. So first, you can go to library on here and see that there are thousands of smart plans that are already available. And you can go through and identify what smart plans you want to add to your own personal library to support your business. So let's just look at a few of these. Let's look at the long-term nurture smart plan. There we go. So let's go ahead and look at this and see how it's broken down. Now, the nice thing is it's all customizable. So you can go and adjust the language to fit your personality, right? But at least you have a template, a place to start. And with this long-term nurture plan, what happens is it's over 31 days. There's 8 different steps, and the client's going to be touched 3 different times throughout that process, right? So what are those? So number 1, they're going to be add to the monthly neighborhood nurture to kick it off. So when you add them to this smart plan, it's going to automatically start the other one, right? And then there's going to be a 10-day delay. And then you're going to have a phone call with them. And you can put whatever script or introduction you want on this so that it shows on your command. Or you just know, hey, I got to contact this person and have a conversation with them. So it reminds you. It sets a task on your to-do list for you. And then it's going to wait another 10 days. And it's going to automatically send. You can choose if you want it to be auto send or for you to create an email to send to them. So you can do either or. But there will be a value email that needs to be sent out as part of the long-term nurture smart plan. And again, you can customize that to where it's like, hey, you create a template that's already there. And now whenever anybody's put on this smart plan, they automatically get that exact same email. Or you can say, hey, for this specific smart plan, I want that email to be more personable and customized based off of their client situation. So every time that pops up, it's just a reminder on my end to create that email. So obviously there's far more scalability when it's a plug and play template you can create. And then it will autofill their name and the contacts information. So it makes it very easy to set up this campaign. And then there's another 10-day delay. And then you have these text messages. Now here's the cool thing with these text messages. They are on a dynamic schedule, meaning that you'll see that there's 6 options here, right? It will not send the same message twice. So it's going to choose from one of those 5 or one of those 6 options and send that text message to them through Twilio if you have that set up, okay? So it will automatically text them, automatically email them. All you've got to do is the phone calls, right? So you see it takes a lot of energy out of the process, but also make sure that it does get done consistently, that follow-up is in place, that they're having those interactions with you. And guess what they think? They think you're on top of your business at a high level, right? Which you are. And that's where smart plans can really step in to support you at a high level. Let's look at, we've gone over this one before, but there's quite a bit of new individuals on Zoom. So we're going to break this one down, which is the neighborhood nurture. So hard to see from this side. So you can choose the monthly neighborhood nurture, or you can go with a bi-weekly neighborhood nurture, depending on the client situation. When I have clients who are actively looking for homes, they are out there searching, and they're ready to buy in the next 1 to 3 months, I'm setting them up on a bi-weekly schedule so that every 2 weeks they're getting updated information about the market. And I'll show you what those look like. But for this, they're going to get an HTML email, and I'll show you what they look like. And again, it's automated or manual. And then it's going to wait 14 days, and then it will repeat that cycle. and this one repeats unlimited times. So until you take them off of that smart plan. So what does that look like on the back end? Let's pull one of these contacts up and look at that. So I've gone in here, and for this contact, I've added their neighborhood where they live, or I've added neighborhoods on where they're looking to buy. And what I'm going to do is when I set them up on the smart plan, I go right here, I hit add smart plan, and I do my monthly or my biweekly neighborhood nurture. And when I select that plan, they're going to get an email that looks like this.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, for sure. What's up, Mary?
For these smart plans, do we do this after we sign the contract, or we can do it before, since you're already just giving them information about properties and everything?
Yeah, great question. I would say it depends. Depends on where they're at in the process. I have a lot of clients who are on this who are not even yet in the market to buy. So people who are on the monthly neighborhood nurture, they might be 6 months, a year, or 3 years out from buying right now. So, for the monthly neighborhood nurture, I would set everybody up in your SOI on that. Now, the thing is, you want to give them a call and say, hey, have a script in place on, hey, I would love to send you guys at the end of your actual conversation, say, hey, I would love to send you just a little snapshot of your neighborhood and what the prices of homes are that are selling in your neighborhood, so you guys can be aware of what your neighbors are selling their homes for. Is that okay? Is it okay for me to send that to you, Caitlin? And so that's when I would set them up on it, because the nice thing is on the back end, you're able to see every single time they look at a house or they pull up the app, or they look at this, they click on this monthly neighborhood nurture, it tracks it on your command. So you're able to see how engaged they are with either the app or the neighborhood nurture, and it gives you a lot of information that you can utilize to support them when they are ready to buy. So for the bi-weekly, Mary, that's where I would say that's going to be either you have had the buyer broker signed, or you have had an in-depth conversation about getting them set up, with the home search, and you're getting ready to have them sign the buyer broker agreement. You're pretty close to that stage of having an appointment set for them to, choose you as their agent. Does that help, Mary?
Yes. And what is this link? Is this our URL from Command?
This one that we're looking at right now?
Yes, the one that you said that you're sharing, yes.
Yeah, so this is what they would be sent based off of the neighborhoods that I had created. So let me pull this back up. So in Command, when I add a contact and I go ahead and I add their two things. You can add their address. So if you add their home address by clicking this button and going down to add more information, and you put their home address here, it will automatically pull their neighborhood, so it says this is their primary neighborhood. But now what I can do is say, hey, Mary, I'm curious, you and your family, you're thinking about moving in the next 6 months. If that was a reality, where would you guys be moving to? What cities?
For us, sorry. Yeah. If we move, I would really like Spanish Fork. So
I do too. Why do you like Spanish Fork?
It's growing, it's booming, new stores, just a lot of growth. And I like that it's not too much in the north. I really like the south. So
absolutely, great. So what I would do then, using that information, and I would ask on a few more cities, are there any other places you'd like to live or any specific neighborhoods? Once I got that data, I'm going to go back after the conversation, and I'm going to go ahead and select all of these Spanish Fork areas. And you see that it's adding them down here. Now, when I hit save, it's going to show all the neighborhoods here. So this is just a preview of what they're going to get emailed when I do set up the Neighborhood Nurture Smart Plan. This is it. When they click on the email, this is what's going to pull up on their computer. So on the agent side, it's just giving me an example of what they're going to see. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then they can go on their own and add their own neighborhoods. So it won't let me do it because I'm, previewing this. But if I were to receive this from an agent, I would be able to add my own neighborhoods or adjust which ones are showing up here at the top. Let's say I'm not interested in Vineyard, I could take that one off. If I wanted to have more places in Salt Lake County, I can add those. So it gives them flexibility. And then when they click on a property, let's say they click on this, they scroll through, and they end up saving this. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to see this as a log on the timeline of your command system. So you're going to see all these things that are happening. I am not set up on the smart plan. This is just an example account. But if I were set up on the smart plan, I would see when that smart plan email was received, if it was clicked on, and then if they viewed any homes from that smart plan. So it's capturing all that data right here under the timeline, which gives me a lot of power when I'm having my next conversation with them. Does that help? Cool. So smart plans, yeah, absolutely. Smart plans really are the key to leveraging your business, to like really getting to that scalability factor. How do I get into the 10, 15, 20, 25 homes per year? Well, it's about getting clear about how do I maximize my time, knowing that the touches have to happen. For a contact to convert to a transaction, how many touches do they need? For you to transition a client in your SOI or a contact into a transaction, a closed deal, how many touches do they need? 36, right? 19 for a lead to convert them into a contact, but for a contact to go to a transaction, it's 36 touches. There's no way you can do that for 45 transactions in a year at a high level if you're doing it all manually, right? So that's where this comes into play, is this helps you automate a lot of the process. So you've got to set it up at the beginning. You have to play around with command and get very familiar with how to use these tools, but they can really support your business at a high level. So command helps out with text messages, emails, and really just staying top of mind. Now, I'm going to go back really quick to smart plans. The cool thing is, number one, you can just take ones that are already created, so you can take these templates and run with them. But you can also go ahead and create your own. Let's just say, let's use one of these. Let's say they're my A+ clients, people who I want to give a white glove experience to, or red carpet experience to. I can go through and I can create certain triggers that happen, and these tasks will automatically happen. So for example, I want to create a task at the beginning, and then I want to set a delay of 5 days, or 5 days, and then I want a text message to be sent automatically. And so I can go ahead and type these text messages. I want it to say, hey, Josh, just following up on our conversation, XYZ, right? So you set these all in motion, and it helps you to really master the follow-up portion of your business. Bringing it back on track, this is a big key for buyers, right? Making sure that buyers do take a lot more energy than listings. right? We're aware of that. And so you need to have a solid process in place to automate some of the communication you have with your buyers, okay, throughout the process, so that you're able to, one, cultivate them up to the point where they're ready to buy by staying top of mind through smart plans. But then on the back end, when they're actually under contract, how do you make sure you still maintain that high consistent value throughout the entire process until they close and beyond, right? And so you can utilize Command at a high level to be able to do all that. Just want to pause. What are your ahas around smart plans and how that can really serve your business at the next level? Let's get some shares. Those on Zoom, you're welcome to chime in at any time and share feedback or thoughts or questions.
I think it's critical for any business that you want to grow.
I'm going to pass this mic to you if that's okay.
Yeah,
That way those on Zoom can hear you.
for sure. I think it's important for any business that you want to grow without, having a CRM or any sort of database like this with smart plans and things that you can automate it. There's just no way you can keep up with the growth.
Yeah.
If you get to a point where you, like you said, you're doing 45, 50, 60, 70 transactions, there's just no way you can follow up with all those people. And as you grow your business, you'll get a bigger database, more contacts. If you have 1,200 contacts, there's no way you're going to manually be able to, contact every single person in that list 36 times in a year. There's just not a way to possibly do that. So if you have systems that can automate it, you're going to be able to grow to the point where, okay, now you maybe start building a team because you can't handle all of the business yourself, so that you can still continue to grow even though you've personally maxed out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. What was your name?
Cameron?
Cameron? Cool. Thanks, Cameron. You hit the nail on the head. It's really about realizing from this start, go back to the slides. So if we go back to the beginning, realizing that growing the business is priority number one, right? Making sure that there's consistent flow within your business of new leads coming in the door. The problem is we cannot sacrifice running the business. We still have to invest time and energy into all of these different points. And so realizing that when we automate some of the other stuff, the text messages and the emails that can take a lot of time, we then can focus on these two core pieces of our business, right? So really making sure that the quality experience is still there as you scale. People are still having an over-the-top experience by the way that you have set your business up from the beginning, okay? Cool. So here's the thing. You've got to make sure that you don't waste time with buyers, okay? You've got to make sure that they are able, ready, and willing to purchase, that they're able and ready, but not right now. Sorry, and these are the three categories. So initially, you've got to be aware when you're meeting with buyers, potential buyers, what category do they actually fall into? So A-class buyers are able, ready, and willing to purchase. B-class buyers are the people who are able and ready, but not right now. So there's some gap in time from when they're ready to buy. And then there's the C. They're just not ready, right? And so you have to have a process on how do I find out where they are? How do I actually classify those buyers and identify who I should really invest my time with, right? Because your time is a limited resource. So you've got to get very good at weeding out the buyers who just are not ready to buy for whatever reason, and finding the ones that really are ready to move the ball forward, right? So that's what we're going to go through is that actual process of qualifying buyers' leads. So, and that's one thing as well you may have seen on Command, is that you can use tags to classify your database and segment individuals. So you can put, an A tag, B tag, C tag on them as well. So that helps you to know how often you should be contacting them. My C individuals, I'm only contacting them once a quarter through phone calls, right? But I'm also having them on a drip campaign, whether that be the neighborhood nurture once per month or sending my biweekly newsletter that adds value. But I'm not putting a lot of actual time and energy. It's more automated things that are set up for them, except for the quarterly calls. And then the people who are on the B and C category or B and A category get very different interactions from me, right? Because of their where they're at in their cycle. So let me just break these down a little bit further. So A buyers are individuals who will be under contract within a matter of weeks up to 2 months. Okay. B buyers are individuals who something must happen first. So they've got to get their existing home under contract. They have to wait for their lease to expire. Maybe they're 6 months out on their lease and they've got to wait for that to expire to buy, or they're trying to get cash from their tax refund, whatever it may be. There's just certain things in place that need to happen before they can move up to that A list, okay? And then your C buyers, these are individuals who have very exacting situations. And it says, for example, if they can sell their property for a specific price or get a house on a street that they've always loved. So it's like, hey, the only reason I'll either buy or sell is for this exact reason, right? So it's just a little bit harder to work with them. Or it might be that their credit is not in a good enough place for them to buy. There can be just multiple different things that are holding them back from being able to move forward right now. So not investing time into those individuals is probably a smart decision. So this helps. Who's used a buyer lead sheet? No? Okay. So there is one on, do you have, either of you have the toolkit with you? Yeah. And let me grab you a book. There we go. Yep. So this should be in the digital toolkit, but also the paper toolkit that we have. And this helps you to have a system around collecting the right information to qualify buyer leads. Does it have a page number on it?
No.
No? Okay.
It was at the very beginning of the
Cool. At the beginning of the, okay, great. So for those who are on Zoom, you'll want to navigate to the online Google Drive, and it will be in the toolkit, not in Spark number 7. And it's, yeah, just in that folder. So if you can't find it, shoot me a text after and I'll be able to make sure you get that. So this buyer lead sheet, though, helps you collect the right information to help you move the buyer through the process and also qualify them so that you know if you should invest more time in them or how you should really navigate the situation. So this helps you to uncover if the buyer is able, ready, and willing, right? Now, through the process, when you first have an interaction, let's say that you have a family member who's like, hey, yeah, I have Janice at work who mentioned buying a home. She's probably in the potential of buying a home, so you should talk to her. So when you're having a conversation with Janice for the first time, what do you ask? What do you talk about to make sure you find the right information that's going to help you do your job at the highest level? Right? That's what this sheet's for. So we're going to go through a few questions that you can ask. Does it have bullet points on like price, motivation, and those different pieces on the toolkit? Okay, then I'm going to just shout them out and you can write them down somewhere there. So these are the different areas that you should cover on this conversation. So price, and I'll just reference a few questions and ideas and you can create your own down the road. But for example, like, have you guys purchased a home before? And so when I say price, you're going to want to find a few different things out about price. Price is in how much they're comfortable with paying per month on a new home, but also understanding that, you know, there are closing costs. There's a down payment that's needed. And so you're having a conversation around how much they can afford and what their situation is financially, right? So with price, asking somebody if they've purchased a home before, why might that be a good question just to have in your pocket? What would that help with? Exactly. So you're far more aware of what they do or do not know about a real estate purchase. If they've been through the process before, they understand that there's something called a down payment that's needed, right? They understand that there's something called closing costs, typically. And so you can navigate the conversation a little differently. For first-time home buyers, you kind of got to go from like scratch, right? Really make sure that they're aware that, hey, it can cost you an extra 2, 3, 4, 5 grand in closing costs. Well, what are those, right? So that's where that first question of, have you guys bought a home before, helps you understand what kind of pricing conversation you should have with them. And then also, how much have you been pre-qualified for if they've gone through the process? So the previous question before that is, have you already connected with a lender? Great, you have. You've gone through the process. Well, awesome. How much have you been pre-qualified for? So that you're aware of what they have to play with. The next one is around motivation. The next bullet point is motivation. What might be some questions we can ask to identify what their motivation is and why they're wanting to move, why they're wanting to buy a new home? Yeah. Keep it simple. Why do you want to buy? Why are you guys wanting to move? Why is buying a home important to you? Right? So just simply asking, they're going to just tell you what the reasoning is. And that's going to be important for you, right? Not only on the sales side to be able to understand their motivations, but also to be able to help move them throughout the process, right? And consistently remind them when things get tough, because you always run into hiccups on transactions, being able to remind them of why it's worth the headache or the hassle, right? So reminding them of what they're moving towards. Location is another bullet point. So identifying where they're wanting to move. Do you guys have specific cities or neighborhoods in mind? And then this one's important too, which is identifying, but also clarifying the difference between wants and needs. So this is an important one. This helps you to not show 30 homes before they choose, pull the trigger. And so it's as simple as having a conversation and say, hey, there's no perfect homes. So I'm just curious around, your guys' wants and your needs. Like, what do you really have to have in a home? And then what are some of the cherries on top that we might be able to find that's not a deal breaker, but it would be nice to have. So planting that seed that they're not going to get every single thing that they wanted. It's pretty tough to be able to do that. There's going to be some sacrifice that they have to give. But let's identify what are the absolute must-haves in a new home. And then with that, you can then help them move forward, right? When you come across 3 different homes and point out that it has all their must-haves covered. There are a few wants that were missing, but it's okay because all the must-haves were covered. We covered all those bases, right? So again, just making sure that you've identified, but then also clarified the difference between wants and needs. The next one is going to be timeline. How soon do you guys want to move, or how soon do you want to be in a new home? If you could wave a magic wand, how quickly would you want to be in your new house? The next bullet point is going to be finances. So this is after you've had the intro conversation around some of the price points, right? Then it's having the actual conversation around, well, how are you going to pay for these things? So have you guys already made plans to pay for the down payment and closing costs out of pocket? Do you already have that saved up? Are you guys ready to make that investment? and then asking if they need, for some individuals, depending on the individuals you're working with, identifying if they need down payment assistance so that you and the lender can be on the same page, and helping them be in touch with the right programs. And then the last one is just availability. And that's going to be a combination around your schedule and your flexibility with getting them to view homes quickly. So getting it scheduled and getting them out there and searching. If they're ready to move on homes, let's get them out there ASAP. Cool. So that's what the buyer lead sheet helps you go through this process, asking the right questions, so you have the right information and right arrows in your quiver to be able to use that as resources throughout the process. So this is a big key in you also spending time with the people that are going to be able to, you're going to be able to do business with, right? So going through all these questions, you'll find that some people can disqualify themselves, right? Where it's like, well, hey, I actually didn't know that there's down payment and closing costs that were needed when buying a new home. So it's going to take us 6 months to be able to save that money, right? So you can get very clear on a buyer's needs by simply going through these questions. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and get into groups. For those of you who are on the Zoom chat, let me go ahead and find the toolkit online and send that to you guys through the chat so you have access to the link. But what we're going to do is get together and just go through the questions on the buyer lead sheet and just real play it. And this is going to help us get familiar with what's on the sheet and how to ask the questions in the way that we want to ask them, and just get really familiar with qualifying leads at a high level. And this should be on the intro call before your actual appointment, right? Before you actually have an appointment with them, this is when you first meet the buyer, you're having this conversation and filling out this buyer lead sheet. So those who are on Zoom, give me 60 seconds to find the file and send it to you guys on Zoom so you have access. And then I'm going to break you into what's called breakout rooms. So you'll be paired up with people who are on this Zoom call, and you'll be able to go through it together. And then we'll do the same thing here in the class, and we'll just get you three together. Okay, cool. Give me 1 second, guys, on Zoom.
Hey, Shoney, this is Joe Hawes. I'm not going to participate. I'm driving.
That's fine. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
That's me.
In the toolkit, usually you have the. It might be in like, I don't think you. Yeah, I don't think you have the toolkit. The stuff are a little packed. Do you have another print toolkit?
Yeah, got it.
Oh, okay. So this is like first time you ever come home. Yeah, so I would say like, yeah, when you connect. There you go. Yeah.
We're good. Now, where are you?
I think this is, it's right here.
All right, so for those who
Yeah.
are on Zoom, go ahead and open the chat. And there's a Google Drive link that will take you right to the buyer lead sheet. And then I'm going to break you into groups of 3. That way, if one of you cannot participate, that's fine.
So if you're working with,
But
like
let's just still go through the process of
a lot of times you already have a lot of this information.
reading through those
Maybe not their
questions and
address,
just getting very familiar with the
but
buyer lead
typically,
sheet.
like, you'll have
When you
it.
say generated data, you're saying like
So like, yeah, from like Zillow, from Zillow, Facebook, or from like the website.
I feel like these questions still apply to property numbers. For the most part, they're not gonna know.
Yeah.
whether or not this information
Oh,
is-
yeah.
They're gonna just assume all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What they are actually planning to do in their minds.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can help them clarify what they're wanting. So, like, it's important.
Absolutely. It helps them to clarify what they want, because a lot of buyers are kind of unsure of how real estate works. And so they're like, yeah, I know I want to buy a home, but those questions actually help bring more clarity through the process, right? And then also helps you to understand where they're at in the process. Like, where are they within my tag system to know if they're A, B, or C quality leads. So that way, you know if you should be spending another 45 minutes with an actual appointment with them or not, right? How long do you guys think it takes to actually prepare for an appointment, to drive over to the appointment, to do the appointment, all of those things combined for a buyer's lead?
My buyer in over an hour just to put it itself, let alone.
Do you mind using the mic? Awesome, thanks.
Buyer appointments I've had, just at the appointment themselves, have been well over an hour. A lot of times going over the information with the clients, depending on what stage they're at, obviously. But when they're at a serious stage of going over things, it takes a lot longer to go over a lot of that information, especially for first-time buyers.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include driving time, depending on where they live, the prep time, making sure you have the information and packets they need. So it's probably several hours per appointment, really, if you just get down to the numbers.
Let's just say 3 hours. Let's just round down, depending on how your process looks, where they live, and so forth. 3 hours of time that, if improperly qualified, there's no ROI from that. So, let's just say that happens 10 times throughout the year, right? Just once a month, you accidentally slip up, forget to qualify them, and you're sitting down with a C list buyer. How many hours does that add up to for 10 buyers at 3 hours a pop? 30 hours. 30 hours of space that's wasted, right? And so just getting very clear up front about what questions do I want to ask to make sure that I'm doing business with people who are actually ready, willing, and able to do business at the moment is priority number one with buyers, because they do take a lot of time to go through the process. And that upfront investment of those 2 to 3 to 4 hours that it's going to take to even get them to sign the buyer broker agreement. Before that point, you don't even have secured business, right? And so making sure that you're only investing that time with people where it's warranted, right? So that's a huge factor. Now, what other questions do you guys think we can use to qualify leads that we can add to this list? Any ideas? Here's a really good one. Good resource I would suggest checking out. Is just typing on Google breakthrough broker buyer questions, and it has this questionnaire. And you can kind of go just steal some of these questions and add them to your own question database. So general questions: where do you want to buy a property? We went through that. Do you have children? If yes, which school districts? Have you bought or sold a home in the past? We talked through that. Do you need to sell a property before you can purchase another? Why might that be a good question to ask? Yeah, and absolutely. And might be able to get you another piece of business, right? More important business, listing. Are you currently in a lease if they are renting? It's like, hey, we're first-time home buyers. Great, well, they're most likely renting, right? Are you guys currently in a lease, and when does that expire? So financing and pricing questions. Have you arranged financing yet? Have you been pre-qualified or pre-approved? Do you have enough funds in your account to cover earnest money? Your new home, this is going over the wants and the needs that we discussed. What square footage do you prefer? Do you want a basement? What style of home? So that has some pretty good questions on there you can go steal from and just kind of create your own. I wouldn't ask 100 questions on that call, right? So that's why I'd get very clear about what are the most important questions I need to ask to get the information that's going to help me do my job at a high level. And then I'm going to show up to the buyer presentation or buyer appointment on top of my game. But I'm first going to qualify them through this process. Does that help? Cool. Great. I just want to pause before we dive into the last piece. Any ahas or takeaways from everything we've covered so far today? Yeah.
So if
Do you want to throw it on the, let me throw this to you. Thanks.
if they say that their timeline is like at the end of the year, would you still want to be like sending them some houses and stuff, or would you kind of put that as a C?
Great question. So those are the ones where you're 100% going to want to stay in touch, right? And you also want to know that timelines can change as well. So if they say 12 months, I'm going to plan on them buying in 9 months because I want to be their agent that's top of mind throughout the whole process. So I don't want to act as if it's 12 months and then get close to the 12-month mark and they're like, oh, we already have an agent, because I was failing on the timeline aspect. So I want to hit it like 90 days in advance. So that way, again, I'm the one that they're going to. There's no question because of the amount of overload and value that I provided throughout the process. So first thing I'm going to do though, in that point is I'm going to set them up on a neighborhood nurture that's coming monthly. So they're able, I'm saying, hey, well, in a year, like what cities do you guys want to be in? Cool. Well, I'd love to shoot you just some like neighborhood snapshots that give you an idea of what homes are going for. So that way over the next 12 months, you guys are experts in what homes are selling for in those areas. Is that okay if I send that to you? Cool. So then I would set them up on the neighborhood nurture. That's going to be just one of the values that I'm going to have touching them consistently every month. I'm then going to send, if they're a first-time home buyer, I have an email that goes out once a month. That's going to give them information on what first-time home buyers should know before buying a home. So that's going to get them up to speed on explaining how there's down payment costs and there's closing costs. I don't want to educate them and spend hours on end trying to help them understand the process. So I'm going to just create content that I can just repurpose and send, put in a drip campaign that's sending to them, right? And so that's where, again, smart plans come into massive play, where you can kind of set it. And then 9 months from now, you have it in your calendar, like, okay, now we've got to have some actual face-to-face interactions. I've got to sit down with them and sign a buyer broker agreement. Okay, great question. Anything you guys would add on that? Any thoughts?
On that same thing, there's actually, I was looking at smart plans today. There's a smart plan specifically for that, for like first time home buyers. And I think it has like, like 34 days. It just goes through the process of
Yeah.
the buyer process to sellers.
Mhm.
There's a lot of already made on
Totally.
their own personal.
Yeah, that's huge. Utilizing the tools that are already created. There's smart plans that can support. There's one that was the long-term nurture, right? There's a mid-term nurture that's like, I want to say set up for a 6-month kind of time frame. And so you can go create your own as well. That's a year long. But I would say just go find something that's already been created and edit it to be to fit your needs, because there's a ton of stuff out there. But yes, people who are a year out, they're still gold, right? It's just you're not setting up a ton of time to go in one-on-one, get in depth of what they're looking to buy and stuff like that, because they're just too far out from the process. But you can still add value, still stay top of mind, so that when they're ready, they're closer to that timeline, that 90-day period, you're the one that's helping them with the process. Great question. Any other ahas or items that have stood out to you so far as we've talked through the buyer winning with buyers? Cool. So this is the part that is often missed and can cost you a lot of money and heartache. Which is making sure that you get the buyer-broker agreement signed. Okay. Now, this is something where some people might be, what reasons would cause an agent to not have a buyer-broker signed? Didn't feel comfortable bringing it up? It's a big one. Probably most common. What else? Cool. So that's one. That's the only one we got to tackle. All right. So I think that's actually, again, that's pretty dang common. Most agents will have a fear around rejection and around the client not wanting to sign the buyer broker. And here's just a few of my experiences, and I want to get feedback from you guys as well that have done deals before. On first and foremost, if we have properly presented our value proposition, it should be an easy partnership for the client. Okay, so there shouldn't be very much hesitancy around getting the buyer broker agreement signed. And the reason why it's so important is, do you actually have, does the client have any responsibility to do business with you if you don't have a buyer broker signed? No. There are agents who have shown homes and who have gone through a process of hours of, nurturing a buyer, and then the buyer ends up signing a buyer broker with another agent. How do you think that feels? Terrible. Now, I'll share an experience where I was on the opposite end of this table, and I had a client who, his sister is an agent here in Utah. And he ended up signing with me, and it was an investment property. So he's like, hey, you know a ton more about investments than my sister does. Now, his sister was mad. She did not feel good about that, right? But at the same time, that's what we have to be aware of, is that there are so many agents out there. When people acknowledge that they're looking to buy a home, there's going to be an agent who gets them signed if you don't. So making sure that you secure your business and make sure you safeguard your time. It's the biggest thing that you can't get your time back. So don't show homes without a buyer broker agreement in place. Okay. Make sure that you've properly presented your value proposition within your appointment to the point to where at the end, it's just natural, normal for them to sign that document. Okay. So let's kind of talk through some of those ideas. How do we actually do that? How do we create so much value within that appointment to where it's easy for them to sign the buyer broker agreement? What are some ideas? No, so this, not the intro call. This is now you've set the appointment, you're in their home, you've gone through, hey, this is what the buyer process looks like. This is what I'm going to be doing for you. This is how I'm supporting you throughout, from point A to point Z. And at that point, that's when you're signing the buyer broker agreement.
One thing I always do when with the client we're signing that agreement. Sorry.
No worries. I know it's never fun, but Zoom cannot hear us otherwise.
So one thing that I always do when I'm in that appointment and we're talking about signing that buyer broker is we actually go through the buyer broker together, because I want to make sure that they understand everything that they're assigning, and I explain exactly how I get paid. I think it sometimes people feel locked in or they feel confused about that process and they don't know, why they're signing this document or what's really going on. And so I think, as you're giving them value, showing, this is what I do for you. I negotiate on your behalf. I will do everything possible to make sure your offer gets accepted, instead of somebody else's, and make sure you have all that knowledge of that process. But also, like, this is the process. This is how I get paid, and so that way they're aware of what they're signing and they feel more comfortable with it too.
Absolutely. That's great. And I think having just a standard practice around how you bring it up, right? That's consistent, that's you're comfortable with as well. So it's, really just creating a script around how do I bring up the buyer broker agreement in a way that feels comfortable to me, but I also know is painting the right picture for the client, right? So for my process, I just say, hey, the state of Utah requires, before I can really negotiate on your behalf and really go to bat for you guys in buying a new home, we have to have something called a buyer broker agreement in place. So I'm going to just break this down for you guys and help you guys understand what my fiduciary duties are to really support you at a high level. Okay. So let me go ahead and break this down, and I'll go through the key points on the buyer broker, explaining how the commissions are paid and how that all works, so that there's no question around like what is the buyer broker, right? So they are understanding of that document. And then I say, okay, perfect. So the next step is after you guys sign this, we'll go ahead and get to work for you. And we're excited to get started and just slide over. And so I've never had an issue with clients. The only one that was an issue was that one I mentioned. And he brought it, he's like, actually, my sister's an agent. And I was like, I totally get it. And, I went through some additional questions on, hey, your goal was to buy an investment. Remember those previous questions, right? Finding their motivation. For me, I found his motivation of it was going to be an investment property, not a property for himself. So I was just like, hey, does your sister know a lot about investments? Does your sister have investments? And I was able to share some of the experience I've had with rental properties, not just for clients, but also for myself. He's like, you know what? He's like, I feel far more comfortable based on the knowledge that you have, and was able to move forward. But you have to make the offer, right? And you have to just present it in a way that, one, you're comfortable with, but also I could recite mine over and over. I've done it over and over again before I even got to the actual signing table. So, hey, state of Utah requires, before I negotiate on your behalf, before I really go to bat for you. So I can just do that in my sleep because I've said it so many times before I actually got to game time, right? So that's what I encourage, is find something that feels comfortable to you, that when you're saying it, you're not worried about, oh, what if they say no, right? It's just another step in the process. And it's necessary for you to feel comfortable and be able to sleep that night knowing like, oh, another agent's not going to lock them down, right? After I've spent 9 hours showing them homes, okay? So, and I know the way that this one's set up, it's kind of says sign the buyer broker, but this is really before that happens, right? These 3 steps. So the first one is ask for the business. When will you guys be ready to buy? Oh, we're looking in the next month and a half to 2 months in your intro call. Perfect. Well, does tomorrow at 3 p.m. or Friday at 1 p.m. work for you guys to meet up and we can go through the details on what that looks like, and I can explain all the values that we're going to provide for you. And then assess financing needs. Have they been pre-approved to purchase a home by a lender? So that's really more, those 3 topics are more in the qualification process. And then the signing the agreement is really when you're in the home, right? After you've had the appointment, you've gone through all of the value adds that you are providing as a buyer's agent, and then having them sign the buyer broker agreement so that it's actually legit, right? And that you're actually going to be able to support them at a high level. Cool. And then with that, you also want to have a process in place for after the buyer broker's signed, right? And so making sure that you have systems in place to, again, just continue that high level of quality. Maybe you've been sending somebody drip campaigns for 6 months or 8 months through Command. And then after you have a contract with them and they're ready to start looking for homes, what's the next level of having a consistent drip process to where they're supported at a high level? Okay, so for me, I've created email templates that my clients actually might be logged in. Let's see if I can share these. So what I do is I have email templates. Now in Gmail, this is actually way better. Let me do this. So when you're in Gmail, let me just get logged in for you guys so you can see this. So I can go ahead and hit compose. And then I can go right here to these three dots. Has anybody used Gmail templates at a high level before? No? Okay. So I can go ahead and hit these three dots. I can hover over templates. And I already have a bunch of different templates that are built out for my clients. So as soon as they get under contract, I go ahead and I change the name. And I have all the other information that they need built into this email. I change the dates on their deadlines, and then I hit send. So how long did that take me to create? Yeah. So that's where you want to have a high level of process. My clients are getting stuff like this almost every week when they're under contract. So for example, let's look at this is information on, I'm sorry, I didn't delete that bottom portion, but so it's like, hey, helping them to understand how to get a hold of the insurance person that I referred them to, the home warranty companies I suggest, and they can pick their home warranty on here. So all that stuff. So they're still just getting high level touches from me throughout the entire buying process. So that's what I encourage as well, is just making sure that not only up to when they're ready to buy a home, but also through the entire process, they have a very high level plan built out for your clients, right? So they have an over the top experience. And then beyond, right? It's like, well, what happens after they close? Making sure that you have systems in place. Let me show you this last one, and we'll move on from this. So this is what they would receive at the end of our process, right before they close. And then they'll get one 30 days after they've closed their 1 month anniversary, where they'll get different emails. But this one's just letting them know that we're going to be buying them a closing gift. And so I just have that process already defined, so that way my clients can have a very high level experience, but I'm not spending time on it, right? I've said it and it's kind of forgotten. But then you can go on here and you can go schedule these messages. So when I first get them under a contract, all I'm doing is having my assistant schedule those 4 messages so they're automatically sent on the right time frame, right? So it's just another way of making sure you're safeguarding your time so that you can focus on growing your business and running your business. Does that make sense? So going back to here, it talks about just really making sure that you have a process in place to support. Once you find those buyers, how do you win them over? And then once you win those buyers over, how do you turn them into raving fans so that way you can create more referral and repeat business, right? The quality experience that they have with you from the initial appointment all the way through them getting under contract and then closing on their home, that's going to determine whether you can call them and milk that relationship for more referrals, or for them to buy rental properties or additional homes through you down the road. Okay, so just making sure that you have a very high value add throughout the entire process. Now there's a little side note, but any questions from anything we've covered today? Sweet. So what we're going to do is just take 3 minutes on page 7, thanks, Lexi. So on page 7, we're going to go through and recap our ahas with these few questions. How has your thinking changed? And what ideas and mindsets were new? What do you feel differently about? And what was meaningful to you today? How will your behaviors be different going forward? What actions will you take going forward? And then what tools, models, or systems will you use differently? Or definitely use? And how will they make you accountable? So just take 3 to 5 minutes to go ahead and write those down. All right. And we'll take a moment to go through the room and just get some of those ahas, some of those things that have stood out to you today that are going to support your business. So if you just answer one of those questions and share with the room what your biggest takeaway for the day is, that'd be great. And if you have a volunteer that'd like to start or kick that off. Yeah. Awesome.
I think my biggest takeaway was that I need to get, I guess you could call it a script, just whatever I would say every single time, when we get to that buyer broker agreement, just to make it seem as smooth as possible and as much as part of the process so that they feel comfortable too. Because if you feel uncomfortable, they're going to notice and they're going to say, okay, something's different about what he's talking about now. Yeah. So I just need to get that down so that I can be more fluid in that presentation. So
yeah, that's a home run, because I've seen it so many times. When I was in door to door, people can lose this. The sale's amazing, it's going great, and then they get nervous around the closing, around asking for the deal. The person was already sold, but then they get a little nervous. Their voice starts to crack, and they get a little hesitant. And the person can just feel the shift in the energy, and for whatever reason, that scares them away, right, and kills the deal. And so, just getting very comfortable in the way that we present the point that creates the most kind of anxiety for agents is the buyer broker agreement, like getting that signed, or the ERS, right? Once that's signed, it's like, oof, pressure's gone. Now let's rock and roll, right? So making sure that we have a solid script around that so that it just comes out natural and normal helps you flow through that process a lot more efficiently. So thanks for sharing. We could just pass the mic around.
Okay, so one of my starting into this, there's so much information thrown at you that sometimes you feel like you're being pulled in different directions, right? As you're focusing in some areas. And what I keep reminding myself is focusing on my leads and setting an appointment. If I want to get a transaction, that is what I really need to focus in. So like he's saying, getting comfortable with your scripts so you can make it happen, right? So that's kind of another aha for me today is, okay, let's focus back on leads and nailing that appointment.
Love it.
My takeaway is kind of similar. It's finding a good script that works and that flows for me, that I won't stumble over. And then also just kind of diving into all these buyer lead sheets, the buyer agreement, and just knowing what everything means so that I can explain it properly. If they have a question, I want to be able to answer that question without fumbling and
Mhm.
searching the papers.
Cool. Is the screen on? No? Okay, let me grab the other one. Ran out of life. Yep, we're good.
For me, it was kind of like the same thing with the buyer broker agreement. I feel like that's the one thing that I don't know, it's like last time transitioning from having a conversation to like, asking for the email or like the phone number or stuff like that. I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Like, you're going through this process of like, okay, what do you want in a home?
Okay, no worries.
And just kind of, having a good time, like thinking, envisioning their home, and then kind of like, oh, by the way, I also did, right? So, and I think the biggest part is me making it a big deal, makes it a big deal for them.
Yeah,
And it's not such a big deal, like if we're gonna be working together, an agreement is
right.
the next thing, like it's something normal with every company or like anything that you're working with. So I need to not make it a big deal on my end,
Yeah.
so that they don't feel like it's a big deal.
Mhm.
I used to work at a company, at a dental office, and we had to ask for a card number to schedule a consultation. And a lot of people were like, well, I haven't even showed up. Why are you going to take my card number? And it was like a huge thing that I remember one of our trainers said, like, stop making it a big deal. Like, because he started listening to our articles, and he was like, you always pause right before like going into it.
Yep.
Like, just like they said, find a script, just practice it over and over, and like just practice the flow of it as well. You don't need to pause. You don't need to be like, okay, now there's,
Mhm.
just make it flow naturally, making it not a big deal, like it's part of the conversation as well, and kind of go through it, like on the phone you can be like, okay, and what's your plan? Like I can take your card number or any kind of thing. Just making it so that they kind of like don't think about it kind of thing.
Mhm.
Kind of same thing with the agreement, like they shouldn't think about it like if they're wanting to buy a home and you're willing to help them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And I think you really highlighted an important part, which is one, don't make it a bigger deal than it really is. If you have properly presented your value, they should want to work with you, right? If you are confident and you are an expert in the market and they let you in their home in the first place, or set up a Zoom meeting with you in the first place, they're already entertaining the idea of doing business with you. So you might as well ask for the business, right? And so getting very comfortable with the way that you ask, but also some tips that I would suggest is plant reasons within your process. What I mean by that is, for example, at the end I say, hey, the state of Utah requires in order for me to negotiate on your behalf, but I also then go in and say, and it also help you understand what my fiduciary duties are to make sure that you guys are really taken care of throughout the whole process. So is it a bad thing for you to let somebody know what the fiduciary duties are? Does that scare you at all to tell them what those duties are? No. So that helps you as well, just like kind of a reverse psychology on yourself, where it's like, yeah, I've got to tell you guys what my duties are. And so let me show you the document that explains those. And this is an agreement that if I fulfill these duties, like I'm going to get compensated for that. Everybody's aware that real estate agents get paid, right? But that just helps alleviate some of the stress on your part with asking for it, because really what you're just doing is educating them and helping them understand that this document is there to safeguard them, but also safeguard you, right? And so that's what I'd suggest, is just trying to create a script around more of an educational process with the buyer broker. Is you're just educating them on a document that's going to safeguard them and safeguard you. and it's not as stressful.
Well, I like to that you felt that the state requires this.
Yeah.
If you're gonna be signing it, you're gonna be signing it. It's not that you would necessarily say that to them.
Right.
That also is like, oh, it's a requirement. It's just another piece of paperwork that's part of the process.
Yep.
I think helps kind of segue it into, okay, this is a requirement and this is why.
Absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out. That's great. Awesome. Rachel and Jake, if you guys would love to share anything that's been impactful for you today, that any ahas or moments that stood out to you, go ahead and share.
So for me, I think really just focusing as far as like the buyer's agreement, just really going through it with them and kind of line by line and just letting them know exactly what it is. So that was kind of my biggest takeaway.
Awesome. Thank you. Rachel, are you still with us? All right, great. So we're going to dive into the second portion of Ignite. As we know, it's not just learning these things that's important. Execution is the key to really getting to where we want to go. And so the whole second half of Ignite is set up to take action, right? And the goal is to, within the first month of this Ignite session of Spark, is to get an appointment. Okay. For existing agents, if you've been doing this for a while, then it's to add 2 or 3 more appointments to your list through these actions. And then the overall goal is to get under contract in the next 60 days. Okay. And so in order for us to do that, we have to take the right actions. We have to implement the things that we've learned. And so the goal for the next hour and a half, the time that we have left, is working on script practice. If you haven't done that today, and then diving right into our daily 10-4. So adding 10 contacts to our database, going ahead and having 10 conversations, two-way communication with people who are in our database, writing 10 handwritten notes to follow up. And we've talked about this in each class, but that is what's going to separate you apart from other friends and people in their sphere of influence. It's not very common for them to get a handwritten note these days. And that's immediately going to show you, really separate you from the pack. So making sure that you're writing those handwritten notes, and then 10 homes previews per week. And you can do that via MLS as well. Get very familiar with what's on the market in different areas, so that way you are an expert on what homes, townhomes, condos are selling for. So that way when a client asks, what's the market like in Orem, or what's the market like in Draper, you're aware of what's going on in those specific cities. Okay, so that's the goal for the next 90 minutes, is to take action. So number one, just do 10 minutes of script practice, so you can grab a partner in the room and practice some scripts. The scripts are all in the Ignite toolkit, so there's a ton of them in there to choose from. One very simple connector that you can use is the Ford script, which is a way for you to be able to contact people in your SOI and rekindle that connection, and is one that you should use every quarter on your SOI. So the Ford method is an amazing script that's in that toolkit. And so let's go ahead and start practice, and then we'll get right into our daily actions and taking success habits for the next 90 minutes. Rachel, Jake, appreciate you guys for jumping on. We're going to go ahead and close out the Zoom room as we start working on these different pieces. Thank you guys for joining.